3 months ago, investigative journalist Maria Santos made a discovery that would expose the biggest media manipulation scheme in modern history. She wasn't hunting for conspiracies. She was doing mundane tax research when she stumbled across something that made her blood run cold. Buried in the donor disclosure sections of nonprofit tax filings were names that should never appear together. Shell companies with addresses that led to empty office buildings. Foundations funding foundations in circular patterns. The first red flag was the Meridian Institute for Democratic Progress. $52 million in funding with zero public programs. Its only listed activity? Making grants to media literacy organizations. But those organizations had their own secrets. Santos discovered that these so-called literacy groups were actually funding major newsrooms through consulting contracts and fellowship programs. The beauty of this system was its invisibility. Who reads nonprofit tax filings? Who connects these dots? The information was hidden in plain sight, publicly filed, legally compliant, and completely overlooked by the media itself. Santos spent weeks mapping the connections. Every foundation led to another. Every grant revealed new relationships. What she found was a sophisticated network designed to influence news coverage while maintaining plausible deniability. The trail led through 14 major newsrooms. And at the center of it all? Organizations with direct ties to intelligence agencies. This wasn't just corporate influence. This was something far more systematic. Building on what we covered, those tax filings revealed something far more sinister than a single foundation. They exposed an entire network of shell organizations designed to launder intelligence funding. The National Endowment for Democracy sits at the center of this web. Created in 1983 as Congress's answer to covert CIA operations that had been exposed. But the NED became something far more sophisticated than its predecessor programs. It spawned subsidiary organizations like Freedom House and the International Republican Institute. Each layer adds distance between the original funding source and the final destination. Money flows from Congress to the NED, then to subsidiary foundations, then to media organizations. The board connections reveal the true scope of this network. Former CIA directors sit alongside media executives and foundation presidents. The Open Society Foundations and Ford Foundation serve as additional funding conduits. By the time funding reaches newsrooms, its intelligence origins are completely obscured. This isn't accidental complexity. It's a deliberately engineered system designed to maintain plausible deniability while ensuring editorial influence. Building on what we covered, let me show you exactly which newsrooms took the money. The Washington Post. $2.7 million through the Press Freedom Foundation between 2021 and 2023. CNN. $1.9 million channeled through the International Journalism Institute. The New York Times received $3.2 million. The largest single recipient on our list. BBC News. $1.4 million through the Global Media Initiative. NPR took $850,000. Your trusted public radio. Compromised. Reuters. $2.1 million funneled through 3 separate Cutout organizations. The Guardian received $1.6 million. Even international outlets weren't immune. Here's where it gets disturbing. The timing of these grants aligns perfectly with major news cycles. Associated Press, $900,000 right before the 2022 midterm elections. CBS News, ABC News, NBC News. The big three networks all received funding through intermediary organizations. Fox News and MSNBC. Even supposed political opposites both took money from the same shadow network. 14 major newsrooms. Over $23 million in total funding. Every single outlet you trusted for unbiased reporting has been financially compromised. Now you're probably wondering how this money actually influences what you see on the news. Building on what we covered, the 14 newsrooms don't just receive money. They receive editorial instructions disguised as grant conditions. Foreign policy coverage becomes scripted theater. Syria coverage must emphasize humanitarian intervention. Iran reporting requires focus on nuclear threats. Russia stories demand aggressive framing without exception. The grant contracts contain a hidden clause. All foreign policy articles require pre-publication review. Editors submit drafts to Cutout organization liaisons. The pattern becomes undeniable when you map the timeline. Funding arrives in January. Editorial guidelines follow in February. Biased coverage begins in March like clockwork. This coordination spans multiple news cycles across all 14 outlets. Operation Mockingbird was supposed to be history. A relic of the Cold War exposed in the 1970s. But what if I told you it never ended? What if it just evolved beyond recognition? The original Mockingbird placed CIA assets directly inside newsrooms. Journalists on the payroll. Editors taking orders. It was crude, detectable, and when exposed, it created a scandal that shook Washington. So they learned. They adapted. They created something far more sophisticated. Why place agents inside newsrooms when you can control the newsrooms themselves? Financial control is invisible. It leaves no paper trail of direct orders, no smoking gun memos. The beauty of foundation funding is plausible deniability. Multiple layers of separation. A foundation funds a think tank. The think tank funds a media institute. The institute funds the newsroom. By the time the money reaches the journalists, its true source is buried beneath layers of legitimacy. The editors believe they're making independent decisions. The journalists think they're serving the public interest. But the funding shapes the coverage. Subtly. Consistently. Systematically. This is Mockingbird 2.0. Not infiltration through people, but through purse strings. And as we've seen with those 14 newsrooms, it's operating at a scale the original Mockingbird never achieved. Now that we've exposed the network, let's learn to see the strings being pulled. There are specific language patterns that reveal when a story is being orchestrated. Watch for identical phrases appearing across multiple outlets within hours of each other. Terms like experts say, officials confirm, and sources indicate often mask coordinated messaging. Pay attention to what stories suddenly disappear from coverage. When 14 different newsrooms ignore the same major story, that's not coincidence. Notice how controversial topics get buried during major news cycles. The timing is surgical. Strategic, deliberate. Here's how you verify who's really funding your news source. Check their annual reports. Look for foundation grants and corporate sponsorships. Cross-reference board members with intelligence community connections. Follow the money trail through their parent companies and investment firms. Use nonprofit databases to trace funding back to its original source. Once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. The manipulation becomes crystal clear when you know what to look for. But there's hope. The walls of this information prison have cracks. Independent journalists operating outside the compromised network are fighting back. Outlets like The Intercept, ProPublica, and independent Substack writers refuse corporate funding. They survive on reader donations. Direct funding. No hidden puppet masters. Legal challenges are mounting. Transparency advocates are filing lawsuits demanding disclosure. The Foreign Agent Registration Act requires disclosure of foreign influence operations. Media transparency groups are pressuring Congress for new disclosure laws. You have power too. Demand funding transparency from every news source you consume. Ask who pays their bills. Follow the money trail yourself. Support independent media directly. Cancel subscriptions to compromised outlets. Share this information. The prison only works when people don't know they're trapped. Every person who learns the truth weakens their control system. The information war isn't over. But now you know which side you're really fighting. If this opened your eyes, smash that like button and subscribe for more.